like the emails in two phases. One is the RSVP, and one is the database. So that I can wait on the database now for a couple of days because we've got that filled out. So then I'll have to, then I can go back through and complete the database.
And you've got to compile that and all that. So.
As of
A draft.
Thursday or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. And we're still at 44? I think we're more than that.
Yeah, we are at more than that. With the emails that you sent me, it should be about 55, I think.
I don't know. I went back to listen to the tape. I stopped doing that. Good evening. Welcome to ANC 3F's November 2014 meeting at Forest Hill, DC. What's that? Sure. I'm Adam Tope, the chair of ANC 3F. Want to quickly introduce ourselves, starting with Manoli.
I'm Manoli Perniotakis, 3F05, which you're in right now, so welcome back to 3F05.
I'm Bob Summerskill with 3F07 and treasurer.
Maliki Nugent, 3F06. I'm the secretary.
Sally Gresham, 3F04.
Mary Beth Ray, 3F3.
All right, thank you. So, Karen Perry is also here. She's our vice chair. So first up, I have an agenda here. Are there any additions or deletions to it? So I'll add a police report if Lieutenant Craig's still here. Do you want to give a police report tonight?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll add you on. And then Manoli.
I have a couple of changes, yes. So the tributary naming, you can strike that.
Okay.
That probably propose again in a year's time due to some requirements of the National Park Service. And the resolution on DC statehood.
Well, the mics only go on the internet. We don't have
they don't project in there.
Projectile, but we'll try to speak as loud as we can.
And the DC statehood will be proposed in December. And in addition, the add a notice or a resolution, or sorry, it'll be a motion on offering no protest on. A motion on Little Red Fox's renewal for its Class B. Oh, you put that on there?
That's on
It's on the consent agenda.
Oh, but I thought we had to take it off the consent agenda.
Oh no,
I thought you said
okay.
Never mind.
I didn't
Sorry,
realize.
I forgot it was there.
Okay.
And
sorry, I've just flown back into town.
yeah, the resolution to divest the Van Ness Vision Committee into a nonprofit, I'm going to do in December.
Okay.
Wait until December.
The resolution to support Hillwood Neighbor Agreement, that should wait till we actually have a representative from Hillwood here. That after 8.
Okay, that's fine.
So wait a minute, are they coming December? Or?
No, after 8 o'clock tonight.
Oh, after 8.
Postpone it until
Okay.
they get it.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, and then is anyone in the audience here to talk about Rock Creek's historic designation? Okay, then I'm inclined to get rid of that as well. I don't really have anything on it.
Are we going to do it another time, like next year?
The meeting's
The
November
meeting
20th.
this month on it. It's on HPRB's agenda for this month.
November 20th.
Yeah, and the staff has already done their report approving it.
Yeah, so I talked to them, but I mean, here I'll talk about it. That's fine.
Yeah,
I won't make
I'd
it.
like to know what it's. I mean,
Sure.
I tried to read through the 120 pages or whatever it
Yeah.
was, but
The staff report's easier to read.
That's only 2 pages. Okay, so with these revisions to the agenda, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Did you vote?
Yeah.
Okay, unanimously. All right, so first up is our consent agenda to take no action regarding liquor license renewals for the Giant and Little Red Fox. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
consent, you just say
Well,
without
yeah,
objection.
yeah.
but it's still has to be unanimously approved.
You just say without objection.
Fine, fair enough. All right, so that passes. So next up, I'll invite the lieutenant up if you want to give a police report.
There.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Good. Good. Okay.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear.
Partly because he's standing up.
That's probably, okay, all right, stand.
That helps.
Diaphragm. So anyway, I'm Lieutenant Craig. I just got assigned to 203 about a week ago, maybe a week and a half. Prior to that, I was in 207, which is down Foggy Bottom, the downtown area, basically 14th to the park, M Street, all the way to the river. So I'm going to enjoy it up here. It's a lot less work. Not any less important, but just a lot less.
Good.
So I brought some crime stats tonight. The first 2 pages are for Police Service Area 203, okay? You can look at those if you want. I'm just going to go to the last 2 pages, which is ANC 3F. These are from the crime map. Does everybody in here know about the crime map? Is there anybody who doesn't know about the crime map? Okay. It's through the DC government website. If you just do an internet search, crimemap.dc.gov, it'll pop up, and you can go in and you can run your own crime stats. If you're curious as to what happened within 500 feet of your house or 1,000 feet of your house, you can put your address in. It'll also run it by police service area, police district, ANC, by ward, and by the whole city. So, and then once you get it in, you can click on a map and it'll show you exactly where the crimes occurred. And it will also put in schools and things like that. There's a little legend you can put in schools and other points of interest. So it's a pretty neat tool. If you haven't ever used it, it's kind of neat to go on there and just play around with it for 15, 20 minutes. Sure can. Crime map, CRIME, .dc.gov.
Thank you.
All right. Before I forget, let me give you my email and my telephone number. Okay. My email is donald.craig, C-R-A-I-G, @dc.gov. And my telephone number is 202-715-7344. All right, so if you have any questions or anything, feel free to send me an email or give me a call, leave me a message, and I'll do my best to answer them. The crime stats, the first page is the last 30 days. It compares the last 30 days from today with the stats last year. If you look, violent crimes down, but the property crimes are up. The last page is year to date for this year and last year for the ANC. And once again, if you look at it, the violent crime is down, but the property crimes are up. What's been driving it is burglaries and thefts. Those have been driving. And I checked with my officers who've been working the area for a while, and I looked at the maps and on Crime Map and things like that. And what it looks like is happening to me is that right off Connecticut Avenue, right off Wisconsin, right off Nebraska, these main thoroughfares where you have a lot of pedestrian traffic, it's like one block and a half off of these main thoroughfares, or where these things are mostly occurring. So it's kind of like people are walking down and then just cruising off a little bit, finding an opportunity and taking it. Most of the thefts, as I can see, are from backyards, unlocked garages, things like that, open garages. And although thefts are kind of minor, you still, you want to protect your property because you're still getting violated. They're stealing your stuff, and you want to keep your stuff. The burglaries, a lot of those burglaries are from unlocked windows or people leaving their apartment doors unlocked, things like that. So just make sure that when you leave, you lock everything up. I know I do it too. I'll get in a rush. I'll go out to the store, come back, and I've left the back door totally open. And so, you know what? But just make sure you slow down, lock your doors, lock your windows. If you have an alarm, set your alarm, okay? And just make sure that you protect yourselves. So what's happening is we've also had some robberies that have been occurring just outside the area. And I've gotten a couple of guys that are in the PSA to patrol the areas for the theft from autos, the thefts, and the burglaries, hitting the alleys, doing that kind of thing, make sure they're in there during the daytime when people are at work. And also what we have on the outskirts with these robbery details, we have power shift, the bike patrols, and we also have our vice unit, which is in play close. They're out patrolling these areas. And so when they put them in an area, they actually go 2 or 3 blocks. So we're getting a lot of patrols from those guys as well. So you have a lot of police presence up here. But like I said, if you have a specific problem, email me and I'll see what I can do about getting some extra patrols in there. Okay, no promises, I'm not the big boss, but I'll do what I can for you. Okay? Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes?
I had read on one of the listservs that there's a new tool that car thieves are using, which is a universal unlock, universal key. They can open any and all locked cars.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if you know about that and you know, if there's any way to protect against that. I mean, people say that they have locked their cars.
Right.
But the cars have been broken into anyway.
Right. I don't know of any universal key that'll unlock every car. I know that each manufacturer only has a certain number of combinations that they use to cut keys. So if a locksmith will have a ring, a Ford key ring, and it'll have 30 keys on it that will all fit a Ford car. And when they come out to unlock your car, they'll just go through the 30 until they find one that works. The other thing I know they used to use was a dent puller, where they would screw it in, and it's a slide hammer where it would just pull the whole lock out. But I haven't heard of any universal key, so I'll research that and see what I can come up with.
Yeah, that's what people are talking about in the community.
All right. Does anybody know about that thing?
I thought that she was probably for new models, because there's these remote openers. They just click a button and everything opens.
Everything opens,
If you get
okay.
a hold of a universal on that, you could probably open just about any car that would respond to it.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, the remote controls that you use, they all have a specific radio frequency that they operate on. And like, once again, there's only so many that are out there, so you could get duplicates, but I don't think there's one that would just operate everywhere. But like I said, I'll do some research and find out. Is everybody a member of the 2D listserv? Everybody? It covers the whole 2nd district. It's a Yahoo group, MPD 2D. It's a Yahoo group. You can get on that. And anything that happens in the 2nd district crime-wise, they put out a crime report every day, so you can see where the Part 1 offenses are. You can see what PSA they occur in. You can see whether they were near you. And when that comes out, a lot of people will just come back and say, hey, can we get more information on the burglary that happened? And we'll come back and tell you how they gained entry and what was stolen, things like that. Also, recently we put out a robbery alert, because we had 3 that were very similar in the suspect description and the way they carried out the robbery. So there's a lot of good things on that going if you can get in there and become a member.
Can you repeat that, how people get on that one?
If you go to Yahoo Groups and search for MPD2D, it should pop up. 2D. Yes. And if you have problems with that, once again, just shoot me an email and I'll get on it. It's been a while since I joined it, so things get fuzzy. I'm getting older. Yes. I know. Okay. All right, we're good?
Well, thank you. Well, welcome.
Yes. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome
All right.
aboard.
I'm going to hang around. I'd like to know what's going on, so I'll be in the back if you guys have any questions.
Thanks. All right, so next up is commissioner announcements. We'll start with Manoli and work our way around. If you have a quick announcement, let me know.
No.
No.
Are we doing updates too?
Are we doing updates and reports?
We do that.
When? Because they're not on
Sure.
here.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, I have a couple. You'll recall back in June, a 3-year-old girl was struck by a car that was turning right off of Reno onto Nebraska. The car was rushing to try to get ahead of the pedestrians who were moving into the crosswalk. So we had a meeting with the Safe Routes to School coordinator at the DC Department of transportation, and have made arrangements to have the crosswalk, the pedestrian signal at that intersection, have a 3-second interval to allow pedestrians to get into the intersection before cars can turn. So that should be in place in the next couple of days. We're also working with the Safe Streets coordinator to change some of the signage around Murch Elementary to make it safer and more convenient for parents to drop off and pick up kids at the school there, both at Murch and across the street at Aiden Montessori and Auguste Montessori and St. Paul's Nursery School. So there are going to be a number of changes that are in the works, extending the school speed limit another block on Reno, creating a school bus zone only on Ellicott, updating the no parking signs in that area, and changing no parking signs on Ellicott to a 15-minute parking so that parents can drop off kids at the Montessori school. So if you have any questions about any of that, see me, that's in the works. Also, we're exploring the possibility of launching some farmers markets, a farmers market up in this area, this commercial strip here, the 5,000 block of Connecticut Avenue, which may soon be known as Forest Hills Row. Forest Hills Row.
Mr. Chance.
Mr. Chance. We're working with Gloria Garrett, who's the manager of the Georgetown and Palisades Farmers Market, to try to establish something maybe over the course of the winter, certainly by next spring. And then my final announcement is the Wilson High School track boosters contacted me just today about a 5K that they're arranging that will, they're looking for city permission to have a route that goes around Fort Reno Park and in some of the neighborhoods back there. It doesn't actually cross into our ANC, but as a courtesy, since it kind of bumps up against our ANC, they contacted me and to let me know that this is happening. And so they're going to be talking next month with the city to try to approve the route, and I may send them a letter saying that since it bumps up against my SMD, I'm supportive of it. And that's all.
I have 2 announcements or reports. The Park Van Ness project is moving along. They're still doing excavation and concrete work. They're doing site utility work. So it's status quo pretty much on the site. They're about 20 feet from the top of Connecticut Avenue. So that's the big thing. Forest Hills Playground had its grand opening on October 26th. It was a huge success. There were over 250 people there. The mayor spoke. Everybody loves the playground, so go visit. That's it.
I have 4 announcements. Our first Music at Van Ness Jazz Night was on Thursday, and it was a terrific success. I'd like to thank Turker. Would you raise your hand, please? Turker owns the Acacia Bistro, and he was a wonderful host, and we're really grateful. It was just a lovely evening. We're also really grateful to the UDC Jazz Alive staff and the UDC Jazz Tet and the Forest Hills Connection. It was a chilly night, so the jazz band played inside, but it got warm quickly, and it was a packed house. So our second Music at Van Ness concert will be on December 18th, and we're going to have caroling along Connecticut Avenue from 5:30 to 7. We've already got the St. John's College High School chorale lined up, and we're working on several other singing groups. And we're hoping that they'll sing at Giant and Calvert Woodley and Bread First and Acacia again, and they'll be moving around the avenue. So please come, put on your big coat and come. The third announcement is in order to bring more vibrancy to the Van Ness area, we're working with UDC to find other uses for their performing arts theater. They have a beautiful renovated theater. I don't know if anyone here has been in it. It's like a mini Kennedy Center. It's gorgeous. And so Sally Gresham, Commissioner Gresham, had the brainstorm, and my neighbor Susan Davidson has a lot of contacts in the theater world. So we brought representatives from the Washington Ballet, the Washington Performing Arts Society, Politics and Prose, and the Levine School over to the UDC Theater the other day. They also have a beautiful outdoor amphitheater space and recital hall. So I got a couple of emails back today from the people who we showed the space to, and it turns out that the Kennedy Center is actually going to be doing some renovations next year, and so some of these groups are going to be looking for alternative space. So this could be a really nice, exciting change at Van Ness to be bringing in some performing arts. So thank you, Sally, for that great idea. And the fourth announcement is that the next meeting of the Van Ness Vision Committee will be on Friday, December 5th at 4 o'clock at Epicurean. That's all.
Great, thank you.
Say that again, Friday, or can I?
All right, so next up is the open forum. So if you have something to discuss about ANC 3F that is not on our agenda, you can feel free to come up to the microphone and raise your issue or question. If there's anyone. Okay. Next up, I will turn it over to Travis Price and Mary Beth, I guess.
Okay. Okay, well, first of all, it's Travis's birthday tonight, so thank you, Travis.
Happy birthday, Travis.
You get to sing? Champagne's outside. Travis bought it for everybody. So as chairman of the Van Ness Vision Committee, I want to start by introducing our committee members. Sally Gresham, Adam Tope, and Karen Perry are the three commissioners who serve on the Van Ness Vision Committee. I saw Ken Terzian and Marlene Berlin. Am I missing anybody else in the audience? Raise your hand. Great, okay, so thank you to the committee for being here. The committee was set up in April of 2013 with the idea of making Van Ness more beautiful and more vibrant. And in the beginning, we thought, wouldn't it be nice to plant more trees in Van Ness? Well, suffice it to say, we have really come a long way from that point. We still want to plant more trees, but now we want to make sure that when we plant the trees, the soil is structured and the tree boxes will absorb water. And that we're working with Brian Hand, our Ward 3 planner, and DDOT and so forth to really do it the right way. One conversation led to another, and we participated in the Vibrant Streets workshop, which was sponsored by the Office of Planning. And they said, you need to look at your neighborhood and find out what makes it special, what makes it unique. And we said, you know what, we have access to beautiful Soapstone Valley Park, and we have the amazing UDC amphitheater on the other side of the street, and we have the embassies. Well, again, one conversation led to another, and in July, the ANC voted to commission architect Travis Price to draw a design for the Wyndham intersection, Wyndham and Connecticut Avenue. So tonight, this is a very exciting event for all of us, especially for those of us who've been in the trenches for the last year and a half. But Travis is not just an internationally known architect, he's also a neighbor. He lives on Chesterfield Street place. And he's been down in the trenches with us, working on a design that's not just magical, but it's also buildable. So without further ado, thank you, Travis.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you for coming. I've tried to set it up tonight where I can show a little PowerPoint, and we're going to hit the lights, and I'm going to take you into this this project. I think one of the things that hope you guys can see, we tried to set it up for you. But one of what really happened was there was a lot largely office in the day. It's restaurants not at night. There are a few wonderful ones like Acacia, but we'd love the entire collection. So one of the things that hit us very strongly in the vision committee and myself was, when I'm going up and down Connecticut, what stops me? Where do I go? Where's the spirit? Where's the sense of place? Yes, Mark has started a little hub of coffee drinkers and croissants up here with bread first, and then it really hit us, and this was reinforced by Ryan and others from planning. Why don't we start to look at this beautiful spot that is underdeveloped, that looks into the park, because the trail into Soapstone Park starts here. Let's go up to our neighbor, UDC. There's the Performing Arts Center that Mary Beth was just talking about. There's the outdoor amphitheater. I bet you a lot of you have never even been back there. I hadn't, and for years, and it's fantastic. So there's a sort of hidden alley, if you would. I mean, almost like I would call like Katie's Alley in Georgetown, where things really can come alive. So what we did is we said, well, welcome back. Let's start with the ugly and some hypnosis. I want to take you on a very quick run through what everybody's observed for a long time, and it's when you see it through the camera lens, I think you really get why certain grave feelings hit you. And we're going to end up at the end with something I call a watershed moment, something that would really hub or anchor the Connecticut area. We have to start somewhere, and we can't do the whole street at once. I know Ryan will, but I can't. And so then the big question came, well, who are we? Who is Van Ness? And this is a provocative image just to say we don't know. But really, when we zoom in on the big picture down to this intersection, one of the big problems that came up was, well, what would people like? What would we want? So, as we say in the design business, 90% of the solution is defining the problem. And it really was an effort to put together a charrette that came out of this contract, and to begin to look at what all these places are and get people to talk about it. But let me just give you the quick, terrible, ugly tour. Crusted concrete. This is cars rushing up and down Connecticut and nowhere to go but home. It doesn't have that draw yet. And if you look at all those images, you can see why the winters are dreary. Extra wide sidewalks, places that go nowhere, no streetscape. And we've all seen the wonderful sort of street sense imagery of cafes and canopies. That's the easy, quick sketch to say we need to ignite people, and for safety as well. So, yes, you've had WAMU move in. I'm going to use this pointer to get my hands going here. And that's been a big asset. But as you look up and down the hub, there's this hidden, wonderful new Kennedy Center 2.0. And this new building came into play, but has anyone ever hung out there? No. And so Potbelly has taken it on their own to do their own streetscapes. I mean, there is a desire, there's a hunger in the neighborhood for something. But this is what we get, and it's that big freeway out there and these big parking lots. And at the park, no parking, no parking, do not park, do not sit. I mean, everything about this little tiny park is telling you, don't go there. By the way, there's the theater. And yes, there's some wonderful this is another hidden jewel, but here's what you have to go through to get there. And there are these little artsy eco moments. I call it disconnected dots. But there's nothing holding us together. There's no theme yet. And there's this jewel in the rough. I just remember it being pulled in there one night, and I won't blow your ears out, but it just continued to rock on. There are concerts and people having a great event, and I think this is going to grow and grow and improve. And also, this is more of the ugliness. I just want to cake you in it so that I'll look good at the end. But,
winner.
Yeah. And the only respite is Calvert Liquor or watching Kojo live. Or you can sit on the top of Potbelly like I did to see all this. But okay, she's panning back to the left here now.
Yeah.
And just past that tree right there where the arrows are, that's that little mini park. And this really started a lot with Sally's problem of what do we do with this park? There's a little bit of maintenance money, we don't know. So we started with this very simple thing. What's something we can do this year that would set a vocabulary, set a note, set a tone for what's going to happen? Yes, in the winter and the summer, the trees are great. There is the big mother tree, the warrior tree. I think we should have a big competition to name it. But this tree is always just a beacon, and it starts to bring people. It brings the park up to Connecticut for a change, and it starts to become something. So we got a whole group of people together at WMU. We had a fantastic first charrette. We've had 2 of these. And the first thing was just defining the problem. And we thought there were 3 themes that really dominate the people in the neighborhood and the area. Nature, the people themselves, the street action, and the wild card, the art. We are a funky neighborhood. We need to bring more of that out in us. And I think you'll see it in scattered pieces. And I won't begin to drag you through it, but this is just to signify that all these were summary notes of amazing ideas. The group that worked hard that day, and we came out feeling like we as a design group and as a vision committee had at least a definition of what people wanted and what would really work. And so the next charrette we had, these are evenings or afternoons, was to come up with some way to get people to start talking in design language with us, not to just come in and plunk it down. So pavilions, processions, objects, elements, and mirth, poems, I think it could be pulled out of that. And we gave people a whole look from London to downtown DC, the Museum of Portrait Gallery, yeah. And to start to look at what fun things and amazing things people have done in terms of just say pavilions. Or I was very involved in Helsinki, and this one years ago. And you've all been at least once, I hope, to the ticket booth at New York. This is Dublin, brand new kind of object piece. So we're trying to find something that really snaps your eye, something that brings you together down at the hub. This is the designer part. Processions, this is where people process. Made very, very famous, of course, in New York by the High Line, which I think is just one of the bright spots in the world of reshifting an area. Or let's start to look at day and night and some of the more, I would say, not the traditional Washington tone of just the same old classical place, but something that has a lot more snap and fun to it. So all of these were sort of languages to start to say, we want to have a wow factor. We also had to look at objects, things that really, like this, can you imagine in 30 years when these trees all grow and they lift the steel off the ground 30 feet? Things that would slow down time, things that would evoke nature, like this piece at UVA. Certainly Sarah is created Frank Gehry's career. But once again, where does landscape, people, place, art, and start to merge? This is particularly funny to me, and it's Gateway, not Gateway, yes, the airport in London.
Oh, Gatwick.
Gatwick, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And then we looked also, like, this is something people really wanted was light, and not just natural light, but dynamic playfulness with light, like the New Mexico scene with the lightning fields, or looking at an artful way to show light. Water, big deal, because we are on Rock Creek Park, and how are we going to capture and get away with the maintenance nightmare, but really bring together something extraordinary that water can do. And we've all danced around City Center, I hope, recently, and seen how a simple approach can really help. Earth, clearly, Goldsworthy is a guru for me, and I think that, you know, this kind of feeling of what can we do with Earth, bring that into Connecticut Avenue, and NAS, of course, lest we forget, mirth should be a big part of who we are, and the playfulness of it, what's going to happen with children, adults who want to get silly once in a while. And so tonight, what I'm presenting for the first time, and we're going to be meeting with developers tomorrow night, and merchants, and others at UDC, and you're welcome to come back for that. That's going to be a very interesting discussion, is to show them that the ANC is open for business, as it says on the invite, and we're really trying now to focus not only the whole area, but show them what we hope as a public group we can pull together. So we began to steal. I learned this from Brian and others. Ryan, sorry. And but here is this. Sorry, it's bleached out a bit. You can't read it at the scale. But this is that intersection. Here's the mother tree, and here's the UDC area. We found out that we could probably gain some space here, work with Fannie Mae, who may not be there anymore, but work out all these transport ugly areas, work with Calvert Liquor on sort of bringing urban density up and narrowing those big delivery streets into something that could become human space. So when you look at the scheme that we're coming up with, there's sort of three big hits to it. And I will be zooming in closer. I'm going to give you guys some 3D of what this is all about. But up here at UDC, we wanted to sort of take away the big regal turnaround space that I've never seen a car in. I've seen construction trucks. And bring people closer to the performing arts and start at the very top of this hill. This drops almost 15 feet from here to here. And you'll see what it looks like in a minute. But to create a water park, to create a place that would activate the amphitheater, to hope for, there's a lot of hope in this. They're all reasonable suggestions, reasonable negotiations to be had. But I think what's going to be clever here is that we might actually put up a small amount of apartments, just 5-6 stories at the most, that we would build up this density, build up the Calvert-Woodley density, and create a promenade. So this is the big move, is a full piece of stone, and we're going to be meeting with DDOT this week and others about how to create what is done in Europe and a lot of cities, the feeling that this is a pedestrian plaza. All these little dots and grids and funny dots you see are going to be these light sticks. On the UDC campus, we had a big aha from them. They have created light sticks. Most of you haven't gone back, or giant lanterns that are very interesting at night, more than the day. But the notion is to actually bring some of their aesthetics, some of their site work down into our area. And this will give you a sense of what we call it the green LA. It's not a trees, but it's our faux trees, if you would. I'm going to show you more of that in a minute. But bridge the freeway and light the people was one of our big moves. So up here are the waterfalls. We come down the hill, and we actually wanted to create this wall that really sort of stops you visually as you're driving down Connecticut. These are going to be lit up columns and an implied bridge, something to kind of tie the area together. This is coming from a lot of these charrettes with people. There's the big tree, and eventually we'll have a wonderful sort of entry pavilion into Rock Creek Park. Blowing it up, there's the water piece, new building, hopefully capturing some of this dead space for a small cafe. Imagine all these streets lined with cafes, and so at the very top of this hill, you would have the beginning at a very low level of these sticks that are going to start climbing up, and you'd have this nice flat area that would be soothing if you were at a music concert. It would sort of attract people up. It could become a great little playground for the kids. And as you come down this hill, these are large copper sheets, and you may have seen some of these effects where at night, for instance, the light will go from green to blue, and it will take 2 hours. It's very slow. It'll massage the senses. At the same time, all of these will start to have vines and annuals and so forth growing up them. And we've come up with a cable system across the street that will actually start to have, if you would, a vineyard of shade in the summer and light in the winter. But most importantly, it's a magic wonderland. It's going to basically kind of stop you, and you'll wonder what's going on. To the right, you can see Fannie Mae today. This is what happens when we take over that space. And I'll talk about why we put a bunch of rocks in there. They're not for you to stumble over or snow plows. They're actually going to be a beautiful sort of, imagine big rocks that come up and we slice the top at seat height, various seat heights, and people, they're almost like permanent stumps to sit on. So the the granites that are coming in, seasonal plantings, winter sun, summer shade, stone benches. What we really try to do is activate a place that attracts you. It's simple. It's not a big ego shot. It's really something meant to play with. It's sort of a set of tools so the neighbors and so the farmers markets and the things that are starting can actually occur in these places. As you cross the street, this is where the old Calvert Liquor was, and this is not remotely a real building yet. But But the notion is there's the big tree, and one continues down this copper alley to cross to the park, and hopefully with the new buildings and a wine bar and all sorts of other cool cheese things, you'll start to actually see this as your hub, your center on Van Ness. We're hoping that this attitude, by the way, will leak and creep its way up and down the street, rather than just go helter-skelter as it is now, and rather than have no identity, we have to start with something, some antibiotic, and I think this is what I would call the antibiotic. As you cross over, this whole plaza we've taken back over, sorry for the subway pull-up, but we will hopefully push to keep a street going back in here to still serve the Giants, still allow retail and things to happen. Not much has really changed, but this I thought was just a great place to pull back and come to the ultimate selfie center, where you could actually walk into this fantastic copper pavilion and step inside, be out of the rain, be out of the snow. But it's sort of, to me, a great place to hang out, to sit, but to actually have, why don't we have the highest definition television there? It's the actual view of the park. Actually frame it, because right now you walk up and it's all kind of back alley, you don't know where you're going, so the idea was to give it full presence and also become an invitation to take you down in. He's texting right there. So, but as you step to one side, we have a very sheer cliff. A lot of people don't know back there, a drop off. I wouldn't call it a cliff, but the notion there is that you'd walk up to a glass panel. You would actually be on a little piece of glass floor with a waterfall under you recirculating. So you'd have this wonderful acoustics of silence and at the same time nature, and you'd be getting the, in a sense, echoing visually the water at the top of the hill cascading down to the bottom of the hill into this waterfall. And that, to me, could be a great place. There are kids that could come and have, they already want to have classes there. And then at night, it's actually internally lit. So it becomes a real draw. And if you can imagine, all up and down that alley at night, and we have at least 6 to 7 months out of the year where we can stroll. And that's really what we want to do, is set the background up for strolling, feeling the joy and peace of it. And this might be the feeling at night. Not Broadway, but luminous enough that actions and activities can happen and the colors changing. Not as bombastic or loud, but something that's soft and gentle. And all these are adjectives that don't flow out of me easily. They come out of the group. And as I said earlier, I think that's our big move. We also want a street language eventually for Connecticut at Van Ness, an identity and an activity. And we're setting the stage for that. And I think by having copper shade and light columns, you'll see how that carries into the UDC campus. We're bringing a lot of action and people that are already there to this area. We're hoping that the Rock Creek paving, the idea of bringing stone or whatever we can do to assimilate that all the way up to the amphitheater will bring some of the park in. It's almost like another gully feeding the park. And then this stone bench is one I built years ago up in New England, and it's the idea there is that we would slice those stones, and those too could become the bench vocabulary up and down the block. Because a lot of the push in the groups that met was not only activating us culturally and a hub, but bringing Rock Creek Park to the street, and therefore us inviting people more to go into Rock Creek Park. So that was the blanched original vision. We took it from here to here. We didn't stop any traffic. But we did, I think, sort of set a marker, and that was the idea of Van Ness Hub. And this last shot is what we're hoping to talk about as it proceeds, which is what are the real next steps. Obviously, public funds will get into play. Developers will be key for that intersection, creating something. And more importantly, people like Mark Furstenberg and others, the entrepreneurship that's been happening in pockets around here will have something that will bring them out and feel safer to invest in and give us a hub that's a home. Thank you.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Travis? Bob?
You can click the light section. That was good.
this clarified?
Excuse me.
Wait a minute. Questions
Bob will ask it. We'll do commissioners first, and we'll have everyone else.
Right now, across Connecticut Avenue, there's no crosswalk along the southern side, and the northern side has a beg button that you have to hit to get across. Have you talked to DDOT at all about actually putting in something where pedestrians can cross every time the light changes?
That is going to be one of the many questions starting Friday.
Okay.
And I think to be fair, right?
Thursday.
Thursday? It's Thursday.
No, Friday.
Uh-oh.
Friday. Yeah. Okay, wait.
I hope you guys figured that out.
But what I really want to say, to be fair, we really sat around the coffee shops and we decided to take a very low budget stab at a vision. Do I think it's intuitively possible? I know it's going to shift and change, and that's one of the key questions will be what kind of paving. How can you, much like a lot of urban experiences, how can we create the illusion that it is a pedestrian way as much as a car way? That's really, I think if you look at this vision, it may not be a finished product by any stretch, but it's attitude.
I like the idea that you have a different kind of pavement going across, so there is a visual marker that it is a pedestrian walkway. What I don't see at all is a place for bicycles.
There's, I think we didn't put those in because we were getting a little cluttered in the graphics, but I think the notion we have here is that we would love to see 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 bicycle art pieces, not have a conventional piece. Of course, we want to have bike share and maybe a car-to-go spot or two. It actually fit right inside those little copper dimensions. But I think the notion is that we would like by the water park or by the park area. A lot of that was discussed, and I'm glad you brought it up because it would be the kind of spice that we'd want to bring around it. We were just trying to set a master plan.
Terrific. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Karen?
A couple of things. One, I don't know if you're aware of the fact that Wyndham Place, the Calvert Woodley side, was technically a road at one point that looped around the two Van Ness North, Van Ness East, and connected with Van Ness Street. Van Ness North did an easement to the park to close part of that off. Van Ness East did the same kind of an easement, and then the council closed the road, so it could never be built. Just as some background. But one of the things that concerns me, and I didn't really see it here, is that that section of Wyndham Place is already a traffic nightmare for many people. Calvert Woodley's trucks back up, cars back up. It's the entrance to the CVS and giant loading dock, plus the entrance to the I'll call it the giant building, their parking lot. How is that going to be affected by this? Because we already have a traffic problem there.
That's a great.
And it backs up
yeah.
onto Connecticut Avenue.
And same thing for across the street. The same question would hold for.
Not really. Not really.
They don't have much traffic yet.
But there are big loading docks there. Yeah.
But with the big loading docks and the trucks that come, and especially at the holidays when everybody's trying to get liquor from Calvert Woodley, the traffic, their parking lot is full, and cars are backed up on Connecticut Avenue, even trying to make the turn to get into that area. So how does that get addressed? And I see people nodding their heads in the audience because we've all been affected by it.
We see it, and we hope to actually, I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too. There's going to be a moment when we've kept the proper access roads that you need there the giant trucks can still come in. They may have to go a little slower to get in and out at 4 a.m. or 5, which is the usual delivery time. But if we don't initiate something there to counteract it, we'll just get more of it. So we at least have technically laid out a route. We haven't stopped any of them from delivery. Have we slowed them down? Maybe. And there's a lot of discussion.
I'm not talking about slowing down traffic. I'm talking about getting the traffic off of Connecticut Avenue onto Wyndham Place so that Connecticut Avenue can move.
Well, I think a lot of that turn-in really is people Calvert Woodley. I mean, honestly.
There's lots of traffic.
No. But the slowing down is, at least when I go up there and I'm seeing the slowing down is always 4 to 7 p.m. when you most see it.
No,
not
it's
just-
during the day too.
Most,
I mean,
yeah, but
it's
most
even
people aren't
during the day.
shopping.
It's on weekends.
Well, I understand, and we're not going to do anything about it except try and encourage Calvert Woodley to eventually not have a shop and stop. I mean, we have to decide at some point as a community that we want to be urban and that we want to be pedestrian friendly. There's going to be a point when it's going to be a little tighter squeeze. I don't think it's going to be a problem for. We've left the roads completely intact. We've just made it look and feel more friendly. I'm not avoiding it. I get it very clearly.
Does anyone else up here? Anyone in the audience have a question?
No, actually.
Or Malachi?
First, I want to say thank you to Travis and to the committee for all the work that you've done on this. This is really spectacular. You've obviously put a lot of work and a lot of thought into this. I really like the idea of having something visually unifying the two sides of the street, and ultimately I'd like to see that same visual language extend up and down Connecticut as well, all the way up to Albemarle and down to Van Ness to sort of unify it north-south as well. My one concern when I was watching your presentation was seeing in these 3D graphics, seeing the cars, the images of the cars poking out from around the little copper light posts,
yeah.
the columns and things like that. It seems like a strange mix. You see kids running around and you see cars there. It's hard to tell where the street ends, where the pedestrian area begins. And my kids have grown up running around in that amphitheater and playing in that area.
Plus what you said tonight about the turn, it's very, if it's deceptive, who's going to not hit somebody?
At first, when you presented it, I thought it was all a pedestrian plaza, and it even looks like Connecticut Avenue would eventually go underneath it as a tunnel, which would be wonderful, but obviously expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, and interfere with Metro.
And interfere with the Metro, that's right. So I'm just wondering, how will you control sort of the cars that do have to go back to UDC, the cars that do, as Bob and Karen were saying, have to go around to the giant parking lot and all the rest?
I appreciate the compliments. I needed those, but because I don't know where people are. But the reality is, I think if you look, and it's very hard at this grain level. And I did bring some prints for you guys to leave you, but there's if you look at all this and you see that little white edge and so forth, that's a full-size granite curb in concept.
Oh, okay.
So the streets are still very much streets. You can't. You'll be very clear in a car that you can't turn left or right. All the controls would be there in the scheme, but I have sort of oversold intentionally the idea that it feels pedestrian, because if the moment the car invades, it takes over. So there will be a kind of slowing down. There will be a kind of attitude change, but that's the inevitable urbanization. But there will be high safety standards because that granite will actually stand out stronger against a kind of red tone, say, granite in these schemes. We don't know the exact material yet, but that strong contrast, when I've seen it accomplished in other neighborhoods and cities, it works really well. It actually makes it even stronger for you.
And I was just going to add to that, DDOT has really stringent rules about, marking the sidewalk and the street and the height and the color and the texture and all that. So I think that, at this meeting with DDOT on Thursday, that sort of granular.
It'll still be very clear where the sidewalk ends and the street begins.
Yeah, DDOT's not going to let anybody build anything that's not.
No, if we'd
clear.
start high and move. I always say bite off more than you can chew, because you can always spit that out, but if you don't bite off enough, you'll be hungry forever. So let's start there.
Great. So time for a couple questions from the audience. I'll start with you started talking before.
I'm trying to figure, we're creating new public space. Who's ultimately responsible for ongoing maintenance of this new space?
The public. And in that,
Well,
under that big
public
name,
is, the public litters.
I think that part of the action, you should speak to that, Mary Beth, is that we're looking at forming a long-term sort of business group, but it's going to be in stages. so that, much like, say, Georgetown and other areas, there's terminology that grows where you will have, hopefully if you bring business will start to participate more in that. If you bring, I mean, there will be the normal district cleanups and regulations, but I think that too comes with more urbanity.
So the short answer is that today we now in Van Ness have something called a Clean Team, which is a city-sponsored group that comes in 2 or 3 times a week and picks up litter, and they're able to mulch and water and that sort of thing. But one of the discussions that the Van Ness Vision Committee has had is what happens next. And one thing that we've talked about is setting up a Main Street type entity, which is sort of a mini business improvement district, with the idea that ultimately, as the retail climate grows in Van Ness, we would become a bid. And I think that that really will happen sort of incrementally with these changes. Adam?
There's 2 hands back there, so Miss, yes.
Kelvin, are you just focused on the Wyndham Place space, or have you looked at the Barron Plaza in front of Giant, which has been a huge failure? And there used to be stores. Very few people here would remember it. There used to be shops in that building, and
On
some
the second
interesting
floor.
ones, and they didn't make it.
I think we've all been looking at that with a lot of chagrin, and that's to repeat. We don't know where it's so big, and there's so many kind of things going, including UDC creating yet another large plaza. It'll be interesting to see how that fares. I mean, in my own personal opinion, I think we have too much space on Connecticut Avenue streetscapes. It's not been broken up and used, and therefore it gets fallow very quickly. And I think all we did was say, like, it started off like, let's just work on that little entry, and now we scope crept all the way back up to UDC, and I think down the road we would look. That's what we're saying. We would look in. We would hope that we stimulate maybe not even a copy of what we're doing here, but a kind of attitude, once again, a vocabulary.
Yeah, and Marge, just to answer your question less poetically, I have talked to Mr. Pollinger, who owns that building, and have suggested that they put umbrellas in those benches and add some greenery, some more trees to sort of soften it, and also to bring some programming, some music, maybe even like a Tai Chi class or something. And I haven't made much progress, but we haven't given up.
But does he own the building where Calvert Woodley is? It's not sold.
Calvert Woodley owns that building.
They need that parking lot. They go out of business. It's not just the person buying a bottle. If people buy cases and they need to park and load, I don't think it's realistic to expect them to give up the parking.
Well, I think it's conceivable that at some point they would put the parking underground. But I mean, that's really a discussion.
We've actually been talking a lot with the owners, and we're trying to work out a scheme where they could have their cake and eat it too. And I think there are ways to technically do it. They certainly seem quite happy if they can have that to adapt to this, which is a good test case for what might happen at the Potbelly as well. I mean, I think one of the big things we're all going to be struggling with is what's our theme commercially there. We all know kind of what we want. We want goody consumer gourmet things to a certain extent. But on the other hand, it's going to be very interesting to provide the background for it and see who we can bring.
All right, so we'll do like 2 more questions, and then I realize lots of people have questions, but we don't have time to sit here all night, unfortunately. But I'm sure Travis will answer your questions if you email.
Happy birthday. Yeah.
Family waiting. What's wrong? So we'll have Hearst, you, and then Miss with the glasses.
I think this was delightful, and far be it from me to make a suggestion to someone like you, Travis. too. I wonder if you could work, whether something could be worked into the architecture of the street that would suggest a broad pedestrian way that, in a way that, you know, in front of the zoo, is a very wide swath of pedestrian marked walkways. Frankly, I don't know how it works, although I know I've had to wait for a lot of pedestrians there, so, and at least at that location, VDOT or whoever has allowed Connecticut Avenue to be slowed up.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think we're hoping will happen in some of the discussions, and it will be a very tough one with everybody trying to get home. It's really those rush hours, and Connecticut's already kind of boxed up. It's always a disaster getting up and down there if you're in a car. So thank you.
And then lastly,
I really liked what you referenced with the Highline in New York, those successful projects, the National Portrait Gallery, with the roofing that they did, which has also become a big community place like the Highline. And I think making that the terraced ground is a good visual implementer, maybe even doing something like a bridge visually over the street. So in Chinatown, everyone sort of rallies around that H Street gate, for example, and that could be another visual trigger that there's something happening here. And I just want to ask you a clarification. Are you talking about closing Calvert Woodley, or?
No, not in the least.
No.
No, I have to go.
That's
have
one
a
of the best
birthday
things
party
we've
there.
got going.
No way. No, in fact, maybe I think it would be great to see them stay open with much of their business is suburban. With people that lived here and moved out, come back. They're an icon, and how do you increase and repurpose and even rebrand them? These are the kinds of things all the merchants have to start thinking about. Like, we want to have the same customers, everything, but we also want to have wine tastings on Saturday or Friday nights, and just all sorts of things that are going to bring. I'm a big believer in the 5 movie theaters versus 1. I mean, the 8 restaurants instead of 2. I think that's kind of the flavor. So they would be, they'll be anchored. Yeah.
great. Well, thank you very much, Travis.
And tomorrow night, if you want, there'll be more of this up at UDC. It'd be fun to hear what developers have to say.
Cool.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Ryan, would you like to come up and tell us about Office of Planning's excitement for Van Ness?
I guess I would.
If you stand there, that's fine.
Turn towards you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ryan Hand. I'm from the DC Office of Planning, and I'm here to talk to you about some new work the Office of Planning is getting ready to start and up in Van Ness. And it's really a compliment to what the Ward 3 Vision Committee has done. That's why we're doing this. That we heard Ward 3
Van Ness
doing.
Vision, not
Sorry,
Ward
my
3
fault. You know what? Thank you.
Don't do that tomorrow night.
Van Ness Vision Committee. We heard them. We were paying attention, and that's why we're doing this work. And what we're doing is something called a vision framework in Van Ness. And what we're doing is we're focusing on Connecticut Avenue from Van Ness Street north to Albemarle Street. And what we're looking to do is improve the retail climate and the public realm, and try to make both more vibrant and lively. So a lot of things we've been talking about here tonight. And the idea is for all of this to be a complement to what Van Ness Vision is doing, and what you heard a lot about tonight. And we'll be getting started on this project in December, and it will run through January. There's going to be a charrette on January 31st. We're going to bring a whole bunch of people together to look and talk about some ideas. And throughout December and January, you'll hear more about this. We're going to have some office hours. You can come talk to me and some other planners about what's going on. We'll ask you some more specific questions as well. And we'll have an online forum for people who maybe don't have time, or our schedules just didn't fit with your schedules, to come and provide us a lot of information and feedback about what you see in this community, what you'd like to see in it, what's basically your hopes, aspirations, and fears. We want to hear about them. Hopefully a little more of the hopes and aspirations, but we really want to know what you think. And we'll be out here talking quite a bit about these projects in the coming months, and I think you'll see a lot of me. This work also falls into addition to an additional project, which will be advancing a streetscape study that was completed in 2010. And so these two things will be kind of happening together. what we're really having is we're pulling together all these ideas that the Office of Planning and others have really put together for Van Ness and trying to tie them together into a really cogent, actionable vision that fits together the aspirations that we're hearing here and try to get to a big collective idea of what the future could be for Van Ness, something that could really happen. So that's the short pitch of what's happening, and I'm happy to take questions.
Do any commissioners have questions?
Right. How should people get in touch with you?
Well, that's a great question. I am Ryan.hand@dc.gov, and then when everyone wants to ask me a question, you can always send me an email. Beyond that, I will be in touch with lots of people in this room. My contact information will be on Forest Hills Connection. I'm quite sure it's already been out there as well. And we'll be posting flyers and other information around the community in the coming weeks, which will also have my information on it conveniently. So I'll be easily reachable. I thoroughly promise it.
I have to underscore, Ryan met with us, came to our offices, worked with us on this hub, and his colleagues really contributed some significant insights for us about the fact that values and visions. I have to say thanks to him again. I've mentioned it before, but I think we're really getting a great team. Ryan, the best thing that's happened to Connecticut, I can tell you.
Well, thanks, Travis. Are there other commissioner questions?
No, Miss?
Right, it sounds as though you have some plans already in place.
So we don't necessarily have plans in place. We have done a series of studies over the last 7 or 8 years, and so the idea is to build on the studies. So we know a lot of things from the work we've already done. So vibrant retail streets, the UDC Van Ness commercial corridor enhancement study, neighborhood sustainable indicator pilot program, among a few other things throughout the community. We've really collected a lot of information and put together a lot of ideas. And we're listening. We're hearing a lot of great ideas here. So you're saving the taxpayers' money.
It is taxpayer money.
Yeah. Well, you're saving our budget money, and I really like it. I'll stretch it a little further.
Does anyone else have a question for Ryan? Sir?
Are you going to have, or have you had so far, participation from students at UDC?
We will be engaging them directly. I've been working with UDC staff and faculty up to this point. More specifically, but I'll be having focus groups and other conversations with UDC populations.
Because I just noticed there's a lot of talented kids coming out of those, and I know they're in a hurry.
Yep.
So I mean, to sort of make them part of that community. The other thing is to avoid town and gown.
That's.
I mean, I think that's sort of the other side of it.
That's exactly one of the big goals here. We're looking. UDC is a great opportunity. It's what's called, kind of technically speaking, an anchor institution. That means it's a place, a big institution that spends a lot of money, brings a lot of people in, who wants to be in this community. That means they'll make investments that no other institution will make in their community because it's their home. They act a lot more like a resident than like a corporation. And we're working to build that bridge together. That's one of the underpinning ideas of what we're doing here.
I'm going to just underscore what Ryan said and say that we meet with UDC almost every week.
No, I know that, but
and
you the administration. I'm talking about the students.
Yeah, so am I. And the students from the professors at the architecture school and their students participated in both charrettes that we did. And Kathy Dixon, who's a professor of architecture at UDC, and who's coming tomorrow night, actually, had her students draw a design for the Wyndham intersection. And so parts of their design will be part of this ongoing discussion of where we go next. So I really appreciate your bringing that up, but rest assured we are really working hand in glove with them.
It wasn't just hello, goodbye. It's like really, I mean, they came up with a lot of ideas in that shirt, like the light things that were really helpful. I mean, it was a team.
Cool.
UDC is an opportunity. It's an institution the city is an owner of, and it's a good vehicle for the city to invest in Van Ness schools. So we're very interested. We'll be in touch with many different groups there.
Great. Well, thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
again.
My pleasure. I'll see you. You'll see more of me.
Travis, one quickie.
Well, you're not off the hook.
No, you put new student housing on Wyndham Place. It's not approved for there by the zoning commission.
Oh, that was a typo, and I think I tried to get most of them, but I didn't get that one.
Okay, I just wanted, for tomorrow night, I just wanted you to make sure that you took out that block.
You should permanently.
I thought it was supposed to be Nouveau Strudel Restaurant.
Okay, whatever. Just so you're aware.
Thank you, yeah, I am.
All right. So next up, we have a resolution to support exterior modifications of Sedgwick Gardens apartments at 3726 Connecticut Avenue. So some architects from Onstra Hair Science, they reached out to me about some exterior modifications to those apartment buildings there that they have to go before historic preservation to talk about. It seems that this is one of the few buildings that is covered by historic preservation in our ANC. So I'll kind of I'll turn it over to you to kind of explain what's going on for a minute.
John Edwards.
Okay.
I'm architect with Ponster Hairsign Architects. And we have been in some discussion with the Historic Preservation Office because the owners of the Sedgwick Gardens and Marissa Berry is with Darrow Realty, who is president of Darrow Realty and owner of Sedgwick Gardens. We're looking at enlarging some of the windows on the basement level of Sedgwick Gardens. And if you're not familiar, Sedgwick Gardens is a Disrobian design building at the very bottom edge of the ANC here on Sedgwick Street and Connecticut Avenue, and it's one of the Grand Dame apartment buildings from the 1920s, 1930s era on Connecticut Avenue. And if you're not familiar with it by name, if you saw it, you would certainly recognize it immediately because of the great porte-cochere that sticks out. Very Moorish Byzantine design. It's really one of the jewels of Washington's grand era of apartment house design. So on the lower level, the only place that we are currently looking at doing any modifications on the exterior, which is what we're in the conversations with this Historic Preservation Office.
Talk louder.
Certainly. The only place that we are looking at modifications to the exterior at this point in front of the Historic Preservation Office is at the basement level. And if you go through these drawings, you'll barely notice where that is. The first part of these drawings show the existing view. When you go back a little further, you'll see what we're proposing, and what you'll probably notice is that you can't really tell where it's different. Actually, you don't have huge visuals on it, but for instance, in these drawings, you don't even see these windows because they're only at the basement level, and most of the windows on the rear of the building are already lower windows on here. What we are looking to do is lower the sill levels of several of the other windows that are currently non-operable windows to allow a better sill height inside, to allow more light inside to the spaces. One of the things that has been suggested is putting more amenity spaces in that lower level. We don't have any firm plans for that, but things such as a fitness center, enlarging laundry rooms, putting a better bike room in there so that there's an actual secure place for the residents to have their bikes, things of that nature. And in order to do that, we would like to have the opportunity to lower those windows so that they'll actually have operable windows there. There are some units in the basement already on one wing, and where the grade is much lower on the northern wing of the building, and so we would be trying to make the windows at the same level as the windows that are already existing on the lower wing. So we're only looking at doing this on the southern wing that currently has inoperable windows, to lower them slightly, and also to beautify the landscape out there in terms of these courtyards. There's the northern courtyard that is a much higher grade, and most of those areas we because the grade is so much higher, we wouldn't be lowering those windows to the same degree because it would just be too disruptive to do that. We're only doing it where the grade is already well below the sill level of the windows. There's one area where we're looking at possibly doing a fitness room in the northern wing where we might have not really window wells, but regrading if we were to lower those windows as well. So that's one of the areas that we're also discussing with the Historic Preservation Office. So we've already presented this to the Cleveland Park Historical Society, and they have found no problem with it, and presented a resolution in favor of this going to the Historic Preservation Office. We've had several discussions over the course of a few months that I've had with Francis McMillan at the Historic Preservation Office, and they've raised no objection to the lowering of the sills. So that's what we're putting for you today as the community group of the ANC for this area. So you have the opportunity to comment and provide your comments to the Historic Preservation Office.
Okay, thanks. So, yeah, I mean, I think it appears that it's fairly minor changes. So I guess first what I'll do is I'll make a resolution and a motion. I haven't drafted a resolution formally, but effectively I will send a letter to Historic Preservation. My motion is to send a letter to Historic Preservation supporting the modifications to the lower level windows of the building.
Is there public comment?
There is when I'm done making a resolution. So that is my motion, to just send a short letter, as they don't typically need too much from us for that. So is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Bob. So is there any commissioner discussion? No.
Just one question. So just to be clear, the proposal, it's only where there's the windows already exposed, so there's no excavation necessary. It's only where the grade is such that the full height of the window is exposed.
Right. There's one area where there's the possibility of putting a fitness center in, or an expanded laundry room, where we're looking at possibly terracing it down a little bit.
Is that right here?
Yes, in that northern courtyard. There's two courtyards to the building that come back in, so we would be, and there's a picture and right here.
Okay.
And there's a picture at the back of this area that shows that would not be visible at all, basically. So in this area here, and of course those plans are, this is at the conceptual level right now when our discussions with the Historic Preservation Office. So even that plan is not anything that's set in stone there, but because we go before the Historic Preservation Office, we wanted to give them whatever possibility we would have, and that would be one thing that we've looked at to get their reaction to.
I have a question. On that same, on AD 2.05, it shows that the windows are below grade. Are you going to have window wells, or how is that going to be done from a AD 2.05?
A2. Right, that was that same area where it would basically step down, the grade would step down, and if you look, turn one page over.
Because by fire code, you've got to be able to get out of the space.
Right. Most likely, if we were to do this, there's also the possibility that there could be sprinkling in the bottom level that would alleviate that, but we're not really up to that stage yet. But in this case, yes, it would step down.
Right, that's what I was.
So there's a drain right there. So any windows that were lowered in that area would be the same size as these other windows, so that you would be able to have egress if the space behind it didn't end up being sprinkled.
Right, so people could get out of the window and walk up those steps to get to grade level.
For emergency egress.
Yes.
Yes.
Are the new windows going to also have, I guess you want to call them security grills, like on the old windows? Or is
Well, the
that going
existing
to
windows
be?
that are there do not, I believe that.
They don't. They do,
Okay.
yes. So how is that going to be addressed?
We haven't gotten that far. Yeah, speaking frankly, the window bars don't look great, but they're there for a reason.
Right.
And so it would be, we're working with the association, the tenants association, I think that would be a collective decision we would make. The residential, if it was an amenity space, I don't think it would be as important as if it was a residential apartment. I think the security concerns would be different. Again, we have not gotten that far.
Okay, we do have windows that can be secure without security bars.
Correct, and we've installed those in a number of our buildings. We looked, and there's different blocks you can put to prevent windows from going up. We have the double pane,
Mhm.
what are we putting in right now at Heatherington? The window specifications.
The security glass.
Correct, the security glass, the double pane aluminum, I mean,
Right.
it's a very upgraded window. That I
And
believe-
expensive, but.
All of our windows are expensive.
Yeah.
And these windows will match the existing windows which were recently replaced and approved by the historic board a number of years ago, a few years ago, I should say, at the property. So
Okay.
they will match that, they won't be any different.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
the windows that are multiple panes on the exterior right now, we would continue that down below. There's some windows on the back that at some point in the past, or they may have even been original because they went to the back of the building. We don't have any weird pictures that really show it, are just 1/1 panes. So where you have 1/1 panes above and the rest of the building, we would do the same below on the basement level.
Okay.
Okay. So people in the audience that have comments, sir?
So, my name's Jeff Quigley. I'm Jeff Quigley. I'm the president of the Tenants Association at Cedric Gardens. We wanted to loop everybody in. I think it was kind of important for us to let you all know what's going on. So we're kind of in the middle of a TOPA, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act dispute at this particular building. We filed suit 60 days ago against the new owners of the building based on this TOPA action. And so we're very optimistic that we're going to be able to come to a development agreement with the new owners in the long run that will encompass a number of issues. However, we wanted to let you all know that that hasn't happened yet. Right? So this is outside of what would be an agreement that we hope to reach at some point but haven't yet. We also thought this was a good opportunity to let you all know as a commission what's going on and that in general we're hopeful that this will be a collaborative process over the long term. And again, we have no reason to believe that that won't be thus far. We've seen the designs that are in front of you. It's just that we haven't finalized at this point. So we wanted to let you know.
Are you okay with this?
We would prefer that any investment, capital or otherwise, discretionary or otherwise, made at the building be part of an agreement that we have concluded, that we've reached together.
Who is the new owner?
Infinity is not the owner, Darrow Realty is the owner. The ownership.
Weren't they the old owner too?
Yes.
That's what I mean.
The corporate shares.
Yeah, it's been Darrow
And we're
for,
not in a position to discuss the lawsuit.
I was just gonna say, but it's been Darrow for years, because Bob Goodrich lived in my building.
We could talk about it later.
I'm not sure you answered that question.
This is.
I'm not sure you answered Commissioner Summers's
That's
question.
what the dispute is about who owns the building. And whether it was moved as a portfolio of buildings or whether it was moved as a single building, Darrow Realty is not owned by the same people it used to be owned by.
Okay, but he asked the question, do you agree with this?
Do you support?
Do you support
I
the
would
windows?
support, I think the windows look fine, but that's not what we're here to discuss. The question is whether moving forward prior to reaching a development agreement with the new owners.
So you'd like the whole process slowed down?
We would like to be, yeah, we would like to know where the capital allocation is prior to reaching an agreement, and at this stage we've only just begun that process.
What is the timetable of this project? From
For the
his, what
windows
he's,
that we're
yes,
talking about here?
yes.
Going HPRB.
Well, we've not made a permit submission yet, so that does not go through to HPRB until that point. However, we've had conceptual discussions with the Historic Preservation Office, and all of my discussions with Francis McMillan so far, and with the Cleveland Park Historical Society has been that this would be a administrative review. In other words, it goes on the consent calendar for the Historic Preservation Review Board because it's not, doesn't raise itself up to the level that the Historic Preservation Review Board would normally be looking at something like this for window lowering of sills and things like that. I mean, it can, but it rarely happens because of their time frame and their workload.
And when do you envision that on the calendar?
I do not know at this point. That's not something.
Any speculation? Are we talking 2 months, 6 months?
It all depends on other plans that are going on with the Tenants Association and with the owners, which we're not really, as the architects, involved in.
So can you explain the relationship between the two? Why there's a dependency on a resolution? I think it just said that it would depend on some additional issues.
I guess the short answer is, I as the architect do not know the answer.
Perhaps as
to
the
your
representative.
question.
Yeah, we are working with the Tenants Association, as Mr. Quigley pointed out. So we are in negotiations with the association, and we hope that, I think both parties hope that we'll come to, a very successful, outcome for everyone. That being said, we do own the building, and we don't want to slow down all of our plans. That is why we're in front of you today. So these are modifications we'd like to make. We don't have construction permits. We have not ordered windows. We haven't done all of the other things, and of course that could change. Just because we are granted an approval, if that's what ends up happening, doesn't mean that we actually have to go forward and modify the building. But the longer that we wait to gain these approvals, the longer it would take us to modify amenities. And if that's what's decided with the negotiations with the Tenants Association, it's a large building. It has 0 amenities. A fitness center would be nice. We've received some feedback for that in the past. So that's what we're trying to do right now. Plan could change. We don't know that yet.
Yeah, also for the Historic Preservation Review process, it can be a 2-pronged process. It could be a 1-pronged process. If you already have filed for a permit, it goes right before the Historic Preservation Office, and they they stamp the drawings if they approve it. They also have a conceptual review process. So that's the discussions that we're having with the Historic Preservation Office right now is for conceptual approval. So we have not made a permit submission, for instance, for this, an exterior permit review. This is the first stage of the 2-stage process. So if and when a permit is made for this, it would still go back to the HPO, and they would have the opportunity to review it at that point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is anyone else?
I wanted to say a couple of things. One of them is that I also am a member of the Tenant Association at Central Gardens, and we have not seen these large color photographs and designs that you're looking at. And I think we would like to see those in order to have a better understanding of what's being contemplated and so forth. So that's one point. The other thing is, Mr. Hairsine, I wanted to ask you whether the garage doors that are presently in place are part of what will be worked on when the windows are enlarged, because I thought I had heard something that would be the case.
And I can answer that if you'd like. So 2 points. I emailed these to you last week.
They were in black and white, and they were very tiny. It was impossible. They were like what you've got on your lap.
You just, when you blow it up, it was the electronic version.
But they're not colored. They're not the colored version.
Karen, you're welcome to have this if you'd like afterwards.
No, I don't want to see that. I see colored.
This is the colored.
It is colored.
This is the only thing that's colored. Were the photographs that were on the document? It is exactly what I'm saying. It is exactly what this is. It was in the back. So these photographs, we haven't seen them. These were originally on the back page. They've now been moved to the front. So you scroll through. They should be there, and you can change the print sizes. It's the exact same. Did you make any changes to this from the last meeting last Monday?
We're showing a picture of the courtyard. That's the
So that's what we did.
Courtyard would be great to see. I think, rather than our blowing the if you could make copies available in full-scale size, that would be fabulous.
The garage should be modified. These pictures just show the
Okay,
removal
good.
of the garage doors and points of egress going out. We have not finalized that yet because we don't know. We're still waiting. We were supposed to have a meeting this evening. We don't know what the association wants yet. So we've sent you our proposal and we're still waiting on yours regarding all of the other areas within the building. So until we receive that from you, any plans that we have are up in the air and, we're at a standstill.
So I have a point of, I just have a point of order. So the motion is to send a letter based on the drawings, not on, we're saying, what we're hearing is that there's nothing firm. This is just a general plan, so it would be to historic preservation based on the concept rather than on an application.
Right, the Historic Preservation Board, or the Historic Preservation Office is looking at the aesthetics of the historic building. So there will be making a judgment call on whether proposed or potential changes impact the historic nature of the architecture of the building. So that's the only thing that they are looking for, and that's what they would look for to the ANCs generally to comment on if you have any comment.
Normally, and maybe I'm wrong, but normally we don't take action until you filed at HPRB. We don't normally take action based on preliminary drawings. We usually wait for HPRB to notify us that there's been an application. And then we take action.
I agree.
So this might be a little premature tonight, I'm not sure.
We came here because we normally do this at the stage when we start the discussions with the Historic Preservation Office, and at the Historic Preservation Officer's suggestion, Frances McMillan, she asked us to initiate that process, and so that's what we would normally do at their behest.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess they asked to come to the meeting and present, so that's
No,
why,
that's fine,
why
I'm
they
just
are
not sure
here.
what our action should
It's
really be.
It's almost like a preliminary
I mean,
information.
based on this, we could just support the preliminary drawings, which
You know,
are minor.
maybe we can say, based on the drawings we saw on November 6th, that dated November
it
6th,
seems-
2014.
Yeah.
But I'm just concerned because
I don't know.
I'm not sure that this is going to be what's actually in the filing after the discussions at HPRB. I don't know.
I mean, we should get a report from them, shouldn't we?
What we usually do before a
Well,
hearing,
if
but they
if
haven't
it's
filed.
If it's
But-
minor, there won't even be a report.
There might not be a report, we don't know.
Just,
Yeah.
This is so minor.
I don't have a problem with what they want to do. I'm just not sure what our action should be at this point.
Can I have one comment? One of the reasons the Tenants Association has concerns about this particular renovation is that the new owners are also proposing to convert the 2-bedroom apartments into studio apartments. So we're seeing a change in the nature of the building.
Excuse me, I'm going to stop you because that can't be before us. That's not something we can consider with the HPRB application.
But we don't have an application.
No, we
Right.
don't have an application. But the conversion or the other plans aren't before us, so we can't take action or do anything about the other internal issues.
Yeah, no.
I think that's
I
right.
agree with that. I mean, okay.
Withdraw,
So
or you want me to make a motion to table?
I have not withdrawn it, but right now there's a second motion to just
Well,
support this as presented. We can either vote on it or.
This would be advice to the Historic Preservation Office and their considerations.
I'd
But
like
it
to
would
make,
not be for-
I'd like to make a motion
Mhm.
to table this until
I
such
agree.
time as we have an actual application to consider.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's fine. All in favor?
Of the motion to table.
Of the motion to
Motion to
table.
table.
So everyone?
6. No one?
Anyone opposed? Abstain? So 6-0-1. Okay. So I think, I mean, generally speaking,
We need an application.
at some point when
Yeah.
you file,
We'll look at it.
we'll but,
Very good. Thank you very much.
but generally speaking, there's not. I don't think anyone has a general issue.
Can I
with
make
it.
a secondary motion, possibly?
Sure.
That we send a letter to Francis McMillan, the staff person at HPRB. Why don't we just send a letter saying that they met with us tonight and we saw their preliminary plans, and we're not gonna take action until, just so they know.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Just so,
That's actually a very good
Yeah.
recommendation.
okay.
So is
I
there a
agree.
second for that motion?
Second.
Darren? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
7-0-0. All right, cool. All right, so I'll send Francis a letter.
Just saying that they met and that we saw,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
It satisfies what she,
Would like from us.
Cool.
and for you to do.
All right, cool. Thank you for coming. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for your time.
Thank you. All right, so next is discussion regarding application for expansion of Rock Creek Valley Historic District to include Melvin Hazen and other areas in Ward 3. I don't have a motion particularly. I had thought I was going to introduce one, but I decided not to because I talked with the Historic Preservation Office and some neighbors about it. Basically, they want to expand what the Rock Creek Historic District encompasses, and they don't actually need to put it on DC's historic list. They can just put it on the federal one, and basically DC wants it on their list as well, so it lines up basically, so the lists have the same stuff on them, and that's basically what created this. I got a couple emails saying this will end Klingel, the possibility of a road on Klingel Road or a bike path or something, but based on my discussions with historic preservation, it should have no impact on that if something would ever happen in the future. And other than that, and it should, as far as I understand, have no impact on homeowners that abut the historic districts. So I don't really see any reason to make a motion or anything on this.
And if I'm not mistaken, they put Pierce Mill in the right
Yeah.
square.
Well, that's a
they were-
typo.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
in the wrong typo, whatever.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it's at. Does anyone have questions or thoughts up here? Mary Beth?
I'm just wondering if it would further slow down the Broad Branch renovation.
Yeah.
That's
my question.
Because it sounded like it was potentially another, what do they call that?
Layer.
Environmental.
It probably still
impact
it's
statement
still
or
up to-
whatever.
I don't know if it. When I spoke with them, they didn't think it would stop any of that. I don't know. I don't know now. I guess worst case there's a historic preservation hearing in addition to the 50 other hearings.
Right.
Yes. I don't know.
I mean, there's a whole chapter on historic preservation in that Broad
Yeah.
Branch report that
Right.
they've done already, so
Mhm.
I just don't know how much else they can
Yeah.
do to slow it down.
I don't think there is anything.
Is it moving? I mean,
I don't even know.
Where's the National Park Service on this?
They're in favor.
They're in favor.
They're in total
But it's
favor
all their
of
land,
everything
right?
on here.
The staff report came out in favor, and
It's
normally.
like one paragraph.
Yeah,
Because I
it's-
didn't see
it's-
Great. I don't know. Does anyone in the audience have any questions about this? Okay, then we'll just
I think just leave it.
continue
Leave-
on
leave it.
our agenda. So next up is Hillwood, so I'll turn it over to Bob.
The Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens did submit an actual application to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. 10 years ago, they entered into an agreement with their immediate neighbors, about 8 immediate neighbors. The neighbors did not know what was going to happen there, did not know what kind of management they would have, so they had a very restrictive agreement through zoning. 10 years later, the neighbors have agreed with the Hillwood to make it a much looser document, so they don't have quite as many restrictions, particularly Sunday hours and more evening hours, and more cars that can park on the land, but nothing that would impact parking on the street. There is still no noise. There are still no complaints about how they handle their liquor license. There is no litter. They paved the road when it snows for the neighbors ahead of DDOT, if DDOT actually got around to it. So they've been outstanding neighbors. The neighbors are all in favor of this application, so I recommend that we agree to it as the neighbors have. You can only move forward if the neighbors agree to it.
All right, so you're making a motion to.
I make a motion that we support, and I sent around I handed out the application.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, so is there any commissioner questions?
I think somebody
Or
right here from-
are you from,
Yes.
are you neighbors
This
or
is-
Hillwood?
This is Kate from.
I'm Kate Margaret, I'm director of Hillwood Estate Museum and Garden.
Okay.
These are some neighbors who just
Cool.
wanted to come and support.
Excellent.
This can only happen with the agreement of the neighbors, the way that the original agreement was written.
Okay.
So,
And the way the ANC was involved in that, the writing of the original agreement.
Right. This was a much easier agreement, negotiation.
well, now the neighbors know what
Oh,
the Hillwood
absolutely.
is.
10 years of experience.
So, you know, it's,
And I also think a lot of the neighborhood has changed.
some of the neighbors
It has,
moved
it
out.
has.
Yeah.
It has changed quite a bit.
Some have moved out, some new people have moved in, of course.
Okay, is there any questions for Bob up here? Anyone,
questions for-
anyone in the audience, or anyone have questions for Hillwood or the neighbors?
All in favor?
Okay, then let's take a vote. All in favor? Say aye.
700?
700.
I'll submit this to DZA.
How are you wording this motion to support?
Thank
Buddy?
you. And thank you to Hillwood, it's a
The app-
wonderful institution.
And
The
you have
proposed
the-
changes?
You have the
I
application
do have
somewhere in
it.
front of you, and it's right there.
Yes. Get those jewels.
Motion change. So this, to approve the proposed changes to the
Yes.
Hillwood.
Could you put your name there, sign and date it?
All right, so next up is discussion to send a letter to DDOT to install a sidewalk along Tilden between Sedgwick and Reno. Basically the side, I think it would be the south side of Tilden that doesn't have a sidewalk along the park.
Where on that map?
Along Tilden, south side.
Tilden, south side. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it had sidewalk all on the
No,
south.
not on
Not
both
on the
sides.
south side.
So
There are trees, it's just
some
parked there.
neighbors approached me to try to get DDOT to install a sidewalk on the south side of Tilden.
That one is, really?
Along the park, which there is none. We were successful in getting a sidewalk on part of the park along Reno.
Right, yeah, that was
So
great, yeah.
hopefully when they repave Tilden, which is terrible, they can maybe install a sidewalk. So I'm just making a motion to send DDOT a letter. Technically, to get a sidewalk, there'd be a petition process, but since no one owns any property along that, since it's federal government land, there's no petition process.
Right. And no trees would be cut down because there is a.
There'd be nothing. There is a path of dirt right now.
Right.
So I was asked to send a letter to DDOT to support this, which is the motion I'm making. So is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bob. Is there any discussion from questions? Anyone in the audience have a question or a thought? Okay.
Send it to asset management.
Asset manager.
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor of this, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right, 700. Thank you. Next is resolution on politics and prose's 30 years.
Venice Vision Committee.
No.
That's
We're,
no,
that's,
deferred.
we're gonna do that in December.
Oh, okay.
So Manoli.
Oh, okay, so this is just something very basic. I know we don't often do resolutions of this sort, but this would be a resolution celebrating 30 years of politics and prose in the area. It's a little bit due to my absence last month and something in September. It's a little bit later than I had expected because they celebrated their 30th anniversary in September. It's obviously it's a valuable part of the community. It's served as a long-standing anchor for the area. and I believe its longevity deserves some special recognition, and you really can't imagine the neighborhood without it. And as Commissioner Nugent mentioned yesterday, there's been some discussion on the commercial block up here about name and about organization, but I think I know I oftentimes describe where I live as just around the corner from Politics and Prose. So it's a nationally recognized independent bookseller, and with its regular readings and events has really become DC's salon, and I think it's also got a great selection of books for kids. So this is a simple resolution recognizing the facts, recognizing those facts, and it honors an important neighborhood institution. And I think it's something that we should maybe think about doing more often. So I'm making a motion to pass a resolution that is, I can read the entire thing, but a lot of you have it in front of you, that was opened in 1984, led then by Carla Cohen and Barbara Mead, today by Bradley Graham and Melissa Muscatine. Its regular authors and other related events have made it into one of the leading independent bookstores in the United States, a true district institution with a national reputation, whereas it's a destination business for Forest Hills neighborhood, destination business for the Forest Hills neighborhood. Well, I got to rephrase that sentence, so I'll rephrase that sentence. And success has supported the rejuvenated and thriving commercial district on both sides of the 5,000 block Connecticut Avenue. So for those reasons stated above, ANC 3F congratulates Politics and Prose on its 30 years of success in providing this community with exceptional and thought-provoking events and program outstanding selection of books spanning all major categories.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mary Beth. Any questions about the resolution from commissioners? Anyone in the audience have a question or thought? Yes?
You might mention the speakers they have, the authors that come in.
Sure.
To add it in.
Great. I'll do that.
I have a minor correction.
Yeah, this one where it's got a little muddled.
Leading independent bookstores, not books.
Yeah, that's a good catch too.
Okay. I guess let's vote on this. All in favor of it as modified? Prisoner, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 7-0-0. So next, are you still doing home rule?
Yeah, the home rule one I'm going to go ahead and do.
Okay.
So this is another, done a lot of hard work on lots of things over the past couple of years, and this is also in the category of offering some recognition to things that are going on in the rest of the city. That we're drawn to the end of the 40th year of DC Home Rule, and this resolution would recognize the commemoration. Unfortunately, events on the West Coast took me away. I wasn't able to attend the official DC celebration of the anniversary. I personally am a firm believer in principles stayed in the Home Rule Act, even if it only went part way to rectifying some of the issues that we still continue to face, including lack of political representation for the residents of the District of Columbia in Congress. So Home Rule culminated in a long fight for restoration of rights following the imposition of direct congressional rule in the 1870s. So I am making a motion to pass a resolution that reads as follows: whereas the residents of the District of Columbia achieved limited political rights through the landmark passage on December 23, 1973, of the District of Columbia Self-Government and Governmental Reorganization Act of 1973, popularly known as the DC Home Rule Act, which also includes the DC Charter. The district is celebrating 40 years of limited self-government under Home Rule, which make progress in correcting almost 100 years of direct congressional control, recognizing, of course, that Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Constitution is still in place, but that's an aside. Advisory neighborhood commissions exist based on language in the Home Rule Act, and the Home Rule Act 40th Anniversary Celebration and Commemoration Commission held a special observance of this progress on October 28, 2014. And whereas the work of obtaining full civil rights for DC residents remains incomplete with the lack of congressional representation representing a continuing, that should be continuing violation of the basic norms of democratic governance. Therefore, be it resolved for the reasons stated above, ANC commemorates and celebrates 40 years of DC Home Rule. And I would further propose that it go to the commission, to the council, to the mayor, the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader of the Senate, and the chairman of the 2 congressional oversight committees in Congress on both the House and Senate side.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melody. Any discussion from commissioners? Anyone in the audience have thoughts or anything? Okay, then let's vote on this one as well. All in favor?
Aye.
7-0-0. So I think we're at the miscellaneous section. So, Mary Beth, are we still doing this boards?
No.
No? Okay.
Wait a minute. We don't want to discuss it?
It's moot.
We didn't do it. Okay. Approval of minutes from October. So Malachi circulated minutes. Does anyone have revisions to those minutes?
I have one.
Okay. What is it?
And I'll give it to Malachi. It's in the last page, last paragraph. Commissioner Perry also asked her to consider holding regular oversight hearings. I asked her to talk to the council member with oversight of the ANC.
Okay.
Here, I wrote it out for you.
Okay. Is there
Something like that.
Okay. Is there anything else on these minutes? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve them. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second.
All right. All in favor as modified by Karen's revision? Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
So we got 6 against, abstain, 1. So 6-0-1.
On the minutes?
Yeah.
Because he wasn't
He
here.
wasn't
So
here.
you're still allowed to vote for
You're
it.
still
I
allowed to
know I'm
vote.
allowed
We
to
all know
serial,
that.
But when you're not here, I
Anyway,
agree.
okay.
I-
Lastly,
well,
Bob, your
never mind.
financial update.
We have, with the checks written tonight and with the allocation of 2 quarters that we got this month of $7,792.64, we have a total of $142,146.82. Which makes us one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest. I think we are.
Until we start paying
Which is
staff-
not a good thing.
Until we start paying staff salaries.
Then it's going to go down.
It's going to go down.
Yeah, still, it's
We have to
8,000 more
finish
than we had last month.
No, but it's, no, but
You wanna
maybe
read
we
the,
will get some grant applications.
There's
We
a
don't know what's
auditor
gonna
report.
happen.
Well, I have a question on that, on grant applications. Are we any further on the Forest Hills Playground grant?
Okay.
Not really.
I think it's,
Okay.
I
I
think
think
it's very
they
much.
can we can probably just talk to figure out them resubmitting it in a different
That would be
fashion, and
nice.
then they should just do that. That's
Okay.
what they should
Is
probably do.
that what I should
I think
recommend?
so.
Can I be not here?
Sure.
In other words,
Can we
ask
do
them
this
to
in
do it at the
January?
beginning of
Sure.
the year.
Motion to
Of
adjourn.
course.
Thank
Might
you.
come up with a new
Appreciate
one
that.
for the.
Motion to adjourn. You want to say?
700.
All right, all in favor of adjourning? Yay. All right, good night.